This is DJ Rasta representing Smoking Needles Records, Smoking Shells. Well, for me, it's a little different. The story's a little different. I grew up in 7 or 8 different countries. So being a, African Caribbean male living in Holland, let's say, or Spain, there was a hunger for music, and it wasn't your typical 80s or 70s feel of how music developed. I always got it late when we visit the States for the summer. My cousin would put me onto mixtapes, Dougie Fresh, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a learned thing for me. Like I gravitated towards it because I starved for it when we'd be in another country for a year not speaking English. So when I come to the States, I'd gather as much information as I can, take it back with me, and let that be my food for the year, if you will. And then from there, I just kind of felt like it just became a part of who I was as a person, and I felt like it's something I wanted to discover and develop, and that's where it started. In Europe, they have these shows called Eurovision. They're like these music variety shows, and they would have it's almost like Soul Train, but not Soul Train, with people, mostly white people dancing to disco or whatever. So I remember watching a show, and they had Rapper's Delight doing a performance. And I was like, who are these guys with these afros? And what's this song? And then the song kind of caught on radio. It was in Holland, actually. I was living. The song caught on radio. And then I saved my money, and my mom took me to the store, and I went digging, and I found the 45 of the record. I remember looking at the label and reading it it was in Dutch, but it had some things in English that I could understand. And, the year was there, the name of the artist, and it was just my first experience with hip-hop was picking up that record and reading the label, and that stayed with me when I started DJing as far as looking at labels. I started DJing in 1989, the fall of 89, when I went to college. My roommates were DJs, and, we started our little our little DJ squad, and we'd go and do the fraternity and sorority parties at my school in Pennsylvania. And, we had these kind of janky turntables, belt-driven. One was no pitch, one had pitch, and then I was like, I have to get some 12s, because that was the holy grail of, DJing. So I saved I didn't save my money. Somehow somebody told me that you could find turntables at Circuit City, which they don't carry on the floor, but you can order it. So I ended up ordering the turntables. I think I got my first, pre-approved credit card, put it on the credit card, and I'm sure after late fees, the turntables probably cost me about $2,000. But that was my introduction to having my own set of 1200s, which, that's a big deal for a DJ. You feel like you've kind of made it once you have your Technique 1200. Well, in college it was a little easier because there weren't a lot of DJs. So my school was Gettysburg College, which is about an hour outside of D.C. So even though I DJed on campus, my true goal was to try and make it in D.C. and DJ at spots at the Ritz, Calabash, Kilimanjaro. And, I would network and go to a record store in DuPont Circle called 12-Inch Dance Records and buy hip-hop, reggae, R&B, and house music. And, I would talk to the DJ, Sam Burns, who was a really big house DJ, real nice guy, real connoisseur of records. And I try to get in, kind of fit my way in. And it was hard. Obviously, there's resistance and competition. And then, graduating, I started doing the mobile thing where I'd still continue to go to colleges and do the campus DJ thing. And then really from there, I got to go to Japan, and that's when I really started taking it seriously, because I was at a unique commodity. It was close to military base. I spoke English, I spoke Japanese, I had long dreads, so I looked almost like an oddity out there. So that was a little easier for me to break into the market. My mom particularly, she would be the main one that would say something if she had to, but I've always said her kind of support was weird. You knew she felt a certain way, and her body language might show it, but she always taught us to be individuals, my sister and myself, and, to be the best at whatever you choose to do. So she might feel a certain way about it, but I think at the end of the day, she respects the dedication. She respects the risks that we take as not having a full-time job and going out and working on your own. And, I think she knows it makes me happy, so I've never really gotten any resistance from my family, and I think they've seen my success and the hard work I've put in, and I think it makes her proud at the end of the day, which I think is an important thing. The main thing is, disc jockey is, you play records. And I think the biggest part, which at times get lost, is breaking records, is when you go to a spot, not getting too comfortable with people hearing songs that they're comfortable with, where because you can get addicted to the reaction of the records. When you play a song and it reacts a certain way, that can become an addiction as a DJ. And it's a dangerous addiction, like any other addiction, because it makes you become complacent in your song choice, and you might feel like, well, I want to play this new record because I like it, but they're not going to react because they don't know it. But sometimes you got to just, like, you know, roll the dice and just play the record, even if it's for a verse, because, you know, anybody can play. We all have the same equipment. We all have the same songs. But I feel like how you play it, how you mix it, and what songs you choose to break is important. So I went through my phase where I had that addiction, and it was like, I got to stop, and I got to really, you know, reevaluate what I want to do and what it means to be a DJ. And if I'm going to add on to the culture, I got to continue that legacy. And I can't look at another DJ and say, oh, he's doing it this way when I'm doing the same thing in my own way. So I've gotten back to more like, you know, there's ways to do it, you know, in a tactical way where you might play a verse and then go into like a more popular song. But the point is let people hear the music so they can say, man, I remember when I first heard it and it was this person who played it, you know? That's also a good feeling too. Right. That's kind of can get lost. The biggest challenge for me was really like being comfortable living in Japan for 3 years and deciding to come back to the States and knowing that everything I had built over 3 years was gonna kind of stop and I have to start again when I moved to Atlanta. And at that point in '97, it was a very Master P heavy, you know, scene, and I wasn't really into that. So for me, it was more like, do I come back here and try and make it, or do I come back and not do it? And, you know, I spoke to a really good friend of mine, and he kind of convinced me. He said, hey, if you can do it there, you know, you can definitely come back and do it here. You're talented. And so I really just jumped head first in and came out and just came back from Japan and just jumped heavy in the scene, and like I've been in it ever since. One of the most proudest moments for me, really, from a fan to even being in the industry, is really like, you know, I grew up listening to A Tribe Called Quest and beginning to work with Phife back in 1999 and becoming friends and then working together and DJing for him, producing for him, and then managing him and then co-managing his group. That's been one of my proudest moments because I always feel like it's a hip-hop fairy tale, you know, like it's probably one of the most important groups, I think, in the 90s in hip-hop, and to be around them and to hear stories that the average fan wouldn't hear about how songs were created and different moments at shows, and when this happened, and when you heard this, it was a mistake, and it worked. It's like being right in like a history book, you know, constantly having access to information. The legacy I want to leave, and I think I've lived my life this way, is I want to have 10 good summers, not one great summer. So I feel like longevity is important. I think like, you know, really planning your career and organizing what you're doing and making sure you have a plan is really key. And I think I've stuck to my plan and I've stuck to my morals and my values and haven't felt like I've sacrificed too much to get where I want to go. And I think being able to take all your skills and talents and at some point share that with another individual and share that with someone who's coming up and someone who needs the resources that maybe DJs like myself didn't have coming up is important, because you can have all the information, but if it's not shared, it's nothing. So that's my legacy.